Grüß euch und Servus miteinander. Welcome, friends of Japanese art prints. Well, my name is Dieter von Schurer. I'm the owner and manager of the Artelino company. Well, and we sell Japanese art prints in weekly online auctions. And on a certain regular or irregular basis, we produce videos focused about the subject of Japanese prints. And the title of today's video is Japanese Prints, Edo Firefighters. Looks like, Edo Firefighters and Japanese prints looks a little bit strange, but one after the other. First of all, what is Edo? Well, Edo is the old name used in the 19th century until the second half of the 19th century for what is today Tokyo. And it used to be the capital of old Japan. But what is so special about firefighters in Edo? Well, they were a rather special kind of guys. They were the wild guys. You could as well call this video Edo Firefighters Born to be Wild. And they are depicted on old Japanese woodblock prints. It's not a main subject, but you can find them, for instance, on woodblock prints by Ando Hiroshige or by Yoshitoshi Tsukioka, the great Meiji artist. I've brought here an example of such a print that shows an Edo firefighter. And that print is by Yoshitsuya Koko. He lived from 1822 until 1866. It's a woodblock print and was published in 1860, and we offer it in our current auction. Today we are in early December of 2019. Edo, the old capital of Japan, was extremely prone to fires. So why? Well, all their houses were constructed mainly of wood and paper, and they had narrow lanes, and the houses were built neck to neck like today's town houses in a row. And most fires broke out during the wintertime when people heated their homes with charcoal. There were several large fire disasters. A large fire had destroyed Edo in the Edo Castle in 1657, and other major fires erupted in 1683, in 1806, in 1834, and in 1872. But the worst fires broke out in 1923 in Tokyo and in Yokohama after this great Kanto earthquake. And the major problem was not the earthquake, but the fires that broke out in the aftermath. Well, in this great Kanto earthquake and the fires, 100,000 people estimated died. Terrible. The citizens of Edo had, with a certain irony, a word for these fires. In Japanese, they called it Edo no Hana. Translated, that means flowers of Edo. The Japanese had a proverb, Sono areba ure nashi, excuse my Japanese. Translated into English, it means something like an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of remedy. And there were many mandatory precautions to prevent fires from breaking out and especially from spreading. Fire brigades were established for each quarter of Edo, and watchtowers were built, and shopkeepers, for instance, they were obliged to keep huge buckets filled with water. The city was separated into blocks of houses which were surrounded by high, strong wooden walls, and these walls could only be entered by gates, and these gates were closed during the night and were guarded by gatekeepers. And when the Japanese in the 19th century, when they built new roads, they constructed them as wide boulevards, like in Paris, to prevent fires from spreading from one side to the other of the road. Let's take a closer look at these Hikashi, the Edo firemen born to be wild. A document from 1738 mentions more than 11,000 firefighters in Edo compared to a total population of 1 million citizens. Well, Edo, the capital of Japan in the 18th and 19th century, was the largest or the second largest after London city in the world. So Japan has always been overpopulated. In 1850, there were 24,000 ikeshi employed to protect the city of Edo. The main task of these guys was not so much to extinguish the fire, but to prevent the fire by spreading out. And how did they do it? By tearing down the neighboring houses. So these guys had a very special reputation. Well, imagine in your neighborhood a fire breaks out and you have to watch how your house is torn down. Well, on the one side, these hikashi were admired, especially by the common people, for their bravery. On the other side, by middle and upper class people, samurai and the merchants, who usually were the wealthy class, they were looked down and they were regarded as the wild rednecks, the rowdies and the drunks. And these firemen had a very strong group mentality, which expressed itself in manifold ways. One was had body tattoos called horimono in Japanese. And of course, the fact that they were looked upon by samurai and the merchant class, that enhanced the cultivation of rough manners. These guys had a coarse language and, just as mentioned, status symbols like the body tattoos. In 1805, there was a famous clash that really occurred between sumo wrestlers and firefighters. It was near the Shinmei shrine. And this fighting, there must have been wild. It went on for a whole day, and it was later dramatized in a kabuki play, and it was also depicted on many woodblock prints from the time and later, and afterwards I will show you one. Fistfights in the streets among rivaling fire brigades were also not uncommon. So again, the wild guys. But the common Japanese people revered these hikashi. By the way, Ando Hiroshige, the famous woodblock printmaker, famous for his landscape designs, he was the son of a firefighter, of a fire warden in the service of the ruling shogun in Edo. He worked to protect the Edo castle, and in the beginning, Ando Hiroshige himself, he worked as a firefighter before he became the woodblock printmaker and ukiyo-e designer that we know and revere today. Let's take a closer look at the equipment of these firefighters. Well, they wore heavy multi-layer jackets for their protection against the fire, and before they went on a firefighting mission, well, these jackets were wetted. Often these jackets have splendid decorations and Japanese characters to identify to which brigade the firefighter belonged. And by and by, these decorations became more and more artistic, a little bit beyond the practical use. And today, these firefight jackets, like this one that this guy is wearing, have turned into collectible items, actually. Other typical protective clothes for firemen in the old Edo days were hats, trousers, gloves, and they were all made in multi-layer thick cotton to protect them from the fires. And another indispensable equipment, and you see that rather often on woodblock prints, that was the standard called in Japanese matoi. Well, each brigade had a different shape of a matoi to identify the brigade, and it served as a means of communication on a mission, like flags in the old days when two ships encountered each other on the high seas. There's one famous print by Yoshitoshi Tsukioka from the series 100 Aspects of the Moon, and afterwards I will present it to you. There you see how two firefighters communicate with this matoi. Let me tell you the story of Oshichi. Oshichi is the best known arsonist in the history of Japan. She lived towards the end of the 17th century, and she was only 17 years young, and she was the daughter of a greengrocer. And during one of these fires, there was a small fire that broke one day out in Edo. She had fled to a nearby temple, and she fell in love with a monk. In order to see her lover again, she had a crazy idea. She decided to start another fire. And that fire that went completely out of control and destroyed much of Edo. It was the Great Fire of 1683. Oshichi was caught and she was sentenced to death for the crime of arson, and he was actually executed. The population of Edo wanted to spare her. They felt sympathy for her due to the young age of just 17 years old. Well, no use. That story was later immortalized in kabuki plays and in books, and you can find depictions of that girl, Oshichi, on quite a few woodblock prints, among others by Yoshitoshi, and I think I can show you one example afterwards. See now, we are now on the website of the Artelino company in the article section, and this is the article about Edo firemen, where you can read more in detail if you like. And this first large image shows a typical Edo firefighter body tattoo, as you can see, and here he carries this matoi, well, this standard. Well, let's take a look at some more. Okay, let's click on that one. That is by Tsukioka Yoshitoshi. It's from the series 100 Aspects of the Moon. It's, by the way, pretty much in demand and belongs to the more expansive designs of this series. And there you see a firefighter in this protective gear holding the standard, this matoi, and there small in the distance, standing on the roof of a house, another one also holding this matoi, and they apparently communicate with each other. Let's take a look at the next one, also interesting. There you see a watchtower, yeah, here. And that is by Ando Hiroshige, the son of a fire warden, and there, down there you see that could be this large wooden wall that they used to isolate the quarters from each other in order to prevent the fires from spreading. Let's take a look at the next one. These images are really interesting, and when you look a little bit behind and know the story, that's so fascinating beyond the purely aesthetic aspect of Japanese woodblock prints. Well, this shows the fight from 1806, I mentioned it, between the sumo wrestlers and the Edo firefighters. There are more. Another one. Oh my God, one sumo wrestler against 6 firefighters. And the guy is defending himself with a ladder. Let's take a look. What more do we have? Oh yeah, there is the unfortunate Oshichi, 17-year-old, the best known arsonist in the history of Japan. And last but not least, let's take a look at this guy. He's so typical for these rough guys. You see body tattoos, fire in the background, and fierce look. Well, so much for today. I hope you enjoyed this little video. And don't forget to visit our auction site every now and then, artelino.com. And I would be pleased to see you for our next video. Thanks and have a nice week.